Please stand and remain standing for the posting of the colors, please. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome to today's celebration of life for the Harro brothers. There is no place like a funeral when the noise of the world ceases to exist. With that in mind, please turn off your cell phone. Let us pray. Father, be with us today as we honor both Daniel and Mark Harro. Help us to be open to what you would have us learn in our time today. We trust that you will comfort us and inspire each one of us to be the best versions of ourselves. Amen.
Good morning. Everybody here okay? Sorry. I'm Todd Riley. I'm the fire chief for Bend Fire and Rescue. Family, friends, fire service professionals, and members of the community, thank you for coming today to pay your respects to our fallen brother Daniel and his brother Mark. Not only was Daniel a coworker, but he and his wife Alyssa are personal friends of mine. So speaking to you today is a tremendous honor. Born to proud parents, John and Denise, the Harro brothers came into this world in Soldotna, Alaska on March 17, 1984, with Mark being the older brother by just a few minutes. 5 years later, their family grew by one with the birth of their little sister, Laura. And until they graduated high school, the Harro boys wandered in their Alaska playground, largely unconcerned about the worry they caused their parents and the havoc that they created. It was in Alaska where Daniel gained his appreciation for outdoor spaces and spending time in the wilderness. He turned into an accomplished mountaineer, skier, runner, and general outdoor enthusiast. And in 2003, Daniel left Alaska for Chemeketa Community College, where he started on his quest to become a firefighter. He was first a student at Sheridan Fire and then was hired with Scappoose Fire in 2006, where he worked for 7 years. Daniel and Alyssa met in 2005, and they were married in 2006 on what I've been told by people wearing dark suits was the hottest day ever recorded in Olympia, Washington. And yesterday was Daniel and Alyssa's 16th wedding anniversary. Daniel had found his person. Alyssa shared Daniel's passion for discovery, and the two of them were always doing things that most of us only dream of. When they weren't working, they were together, either traveling or testing the limits of their cardiovascular systems and humbling anyone who tried to keep up. Alyssa, Daniel, and I shared many mornings by headlamp skiing at Meisner before work. Daniel's nickname for his lovely bride was the Honey Badger. He didn't call her Honey for short. He simply referred to her as the Badge. I came to learn that the nickname Honey Badger was so appropriate because Alyssa is tenacious, passionate, tough, and devoted. It's a perfect match for Daniel. In January of 2014, I was the training captain for Bend Fire and had the pleasure of coordinating the 10-week firefighter academy for the 5 professionals we had just hired, and Daniel was one of them. The Wolfpack was their adopted academy name, and fittingly, Daniel's brother Mark designed and drew their mascot that will live forever on their academy flag, which is over to my left. It was the end of the first day of the academy, and I was in my office when I heard a phrase from Daniel that I heard no fewer than 5,000 times over the next 10 weeks. Hey, Captain. And what followed his phrase of, hey, Captain, was always a mystery. It could be a question, it could be a random comment, it could be a major emergency, but you never knew because the tone and the cadence, they never changed. So at the end of that academy's first day, Daniel came into my office and said, hey, Captain, we have a problem. And I was immediately concerned because this is the start of an academy for 5 firefighters, and many things could fall into the problem category. But the problem that Daniel was so concerned about was the fact that someone had put several plastic water bottles into a place other than the proper recycling container. And I knew immediately that we had hired somebody special. Daniel was a man of conviction, strong moral character, and he did not mind if you didn't see eye to eye with him. Needless to say, it became a regular occurrence to see our newest firefighter bent over a garbage can, rooting out all the plastic, and mumbling one of his other favorite words when things were less than perfect. Grim. He would routinely break the ice in tough situations by uttering, grim, and then follow that with this hilarious chuckle that made everyone else laugh. Daniel laughed when he inhaled and when he exhaled, and that is not easy to do. Please raise your hand if you consider Daniel one of your closest friends, someone you could call at any time and ask for anything. Raise your hands. Look around. That's what I call impact. That is a remarkable example of how you define your legacy. Daniel was a man of faith and was deeply devoted to his family and to Elisif. He was a powerhouse of energy who outworked everyone. He helped whenever and wherever he could. He was passionate about the fire service and the impact that he had on the community, and he was a consummate professional. Daniel did not take this job for granted. Daniel did not take Elisif for granted. Daniel did not take life for granted. In his 8 years with Benfire, Daniel was a member of the Emergency Medical Operations Committee. He was a field training officer. He was on the Self-Contained Breathing Apparatus Committee. He was on the Special Operations Team. He was an academy instructor. He promoted to engineer in 2020, and he was going to be promoted to captain this December. He was also the founder and only member of the department's tongue-in-cheek Sustainability Committee, whose mission was to keep the bay doors closed, all the lights in the stations off, the air conditioning off, and most importantly, removing discarded plastic water bottles from every garbage can in the stations. Daniel's dry, sarcastic sense of humor was relentless, and it could not be contained. Tether in, tether out is a department inside joke that will live in infamy. It exemplified Daniel as a professional who could diffuse a situation and poke fun at ourselves at the same time. Daniel lived with intention and is an inspiration to us all. He intended to see the positive in every situation, even if it was truly grim. He intended to make people feel welcome and was genuinely interested in whoever was in front of him. He found joy in learning about other people, experiencing new things, and sharing his knowledge. He intended to make a positive impact, increase the stoke factor, and make a difference in people's lives. I feel so fortunate to have known Daniel. I am a better person because of it. Our fire department is better because of his contributions. Elisif, you're the luckiest of all because you got to spend your adult years with Daniel. We all mourn his loss with you and know that you will always be a part of the Benfire family. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Brad. The boys called me Mr. Carver at first. Then they called me Brad, and Daniel loved to call me Bradman. And then finally, it was Magic Man. And then after that, just Magic, the last 20 years. I managed the bike shop, Beeman's, in Soldotna, Alaska, where the boys worked many seasons. I first met the boys and John and Denise in 1986 at Christ Lutheran Church. At that time, there were a lot of young couples who were in the same boat as we were. Most were new to Alaska, new to parenthood, or soon-to-be parents. Few of us had family nearby. We shared a common faith, but we also shared much more. We hiked and we biked together. We fished, we skied, we camped. We shared meals. We shared births and birthdays. Holidays were never spent alone, unless by choice. We became family. This just wasn't our church family. This family included neighbors, coworkers, classmates, coaches, and teammates. Some of those are out here right now. The more lives Mark and Daniel and the Harros touched, the bigger the family became. Because of that, we're all family. That's why you're here. The firefighters were their family, and they joined all of us. And everybody down in Bend that were friends with Mark and Daniel. Mark and Daniel started working in the bike shop soon after they turned 14. I knew the boys well by this time, and they were a perfect fit for the shop. Now, it didn't start out perfect. Both of them were overeager and overconfident, and it was a little bit of a disaster the first year, I'll have to admit. But soon the boys, they were always eager to learn, and they were always looking for a challenge. And in a couple of years, they found their niche. Daniel always loved a challenge. He was good with people, and he had a great sense of humor, But if you gave Daniel a challenge, and we had a challenge for him, we had a ton of bikes in the back for him to fix. And that's where he loved it. He loved to go back and just crank out bikes. That was his happy place. He'd work all day cranking out bikes, and he'd join in with us, and we always did a lot of jokes and things in the shop. But when he got done, his famous line when he was ready to leave, he'd say, "Peace out." And then he'd go jump on his bike and go for a 40-mile bike ride. That was Daniel. After 8 seasons, Daniel left us, and he took on his next challenge. He left for firefighting school, and this became his passion. Daniel was a perfect fit. He was so proud to be a fireman. He became Fireman Dan to us. He loved you guys. He really did. He loved what he did. He was so proud to put on that uniform and tell me about his stories and yeah. Now Mark on the other hand, he thrived out front. He loved to be around people. He had that quirky, goofy sense of humor, and it was just fun to be around. He put people at ease. The customers loved him. He was my right-hand man for 10 seasons. Now, some of you might know I'm a storyteller, but few of my stories can be told in 5 minutes. So I won't tell you the story about how when the boys were about 7, the boys cried when John told them that our store, Beeman's, had burned down. They thought there would never be another Christmas because that's where all their Christmas gifts came from. Or the time that they were 8 and they got their first new bikes. John brought them in and bought them new bikes, and they wore the tires off those bikes in the first night. Or the time that we had them babysit one time, and we returned home and the house was dark. We opened the door and they turned the whole inside of our house into a giant tent. It took us 2 hours to put that back together and finally get those boys to sleep. But our boys loved Mark and Daniel like brothers, and we loved it too. Or the time that they came into our house, and Mark and Daniel didn't knock on the door. They didn't ring the doorbell. They just came in. They knew where our fridge was. They knew where the cookie jar was. So one day they came in, and they found an assignment on the fridge, and that's where I got the name Magic Man. I won't tell you about the time Mark and Andy Banis put one of the future owners and now managers in a bike box and hoisted him to the ceiling. It about got us all fired. True story. But I will tell one story, and that was about Mark, and this was about the last year that Mark worked with me, and I'll call it tandemonium. Well, the special ed department brought in a bicycle to us to fix, and we always fix their bikes. Well, this one was a special bike. It was a tandem tricycle, and it was long and it was heavy, and we put it in the back room, and I went down and fixed it. It didn't fit in the elevator, and our bike shop was upstairs. So when I got done, I grabbed Mark and I said, "Hey, Mark, let's go for a test drive." Well, Mark was always eager to go, and so we jumped on that tandem and we headed across the parking lot. The parking lot was empty. The business next to us had gone out of business, and so there weren't any cars in the parking lot. So we started trucking across that parking lot. Well, when you put Mark in the back and me in the front, I didn't have any control over the throttle. So we headed across this parking lot, and both of us were having fun, letting her rip, and then we got to the end, and that was the problem. Somehow I made it past this. There was a big sign barrier, and I made it past that. We went over the curb into the highway. I somehow managed the first curb, but Mark was still going full blast. Well, when you'd ride a tricycle, especially a tandem tricycle, under speed, bad things happen when you turn. So I went to turn on the next turn, and the back wheel came off the ground. Well, the only thing I could do was turn into it, and we bailed over the curb. Both of us ended up in the grass. We checked around to see if we were still together, and we just laughed and brought that thing back to the shop. One thing I've learned this last week is that hugs heal. I've felt the boys' presence in every hug, but I've also felt God's presence. A big hole was torn in our hearts. Well, with time, it'll heal. It'll still leave a scar. But the boys loved the Lord, and they honored him the way they lived and loved. I don't know what the future holds for me. I turned in my keys at the bike shop after 30 years on Wednesday. I don't know. Maybe I'll take a pottery class. Or maybe I'll buy an old Subaru or a Land Rover and fix it up just because. Maybe I'll get in shape like Daniel and climb a mountain. It'll probably be a small mountain. Dan would call it a hill. Or maybe I'll build a pizza oven in my backyard, like Mark. What I do know is that I want to live the life Mark and Daniel did, and they showed me how to live. I'll try to be present and intentional. They were always present and intentional when they were with you. And I'll be present and intentional in my relationship with both the Lord and with the people I love. I will love unconditionally and fiercely, like Mark and Daniel. And that showed in the way that they loved and honored Kelly and Elizabeth. Until we meet again, as Daniel would say, peace out. Love you, boys. Magic.
Mark and I loved each other, and we were best friends. This isn't true of every marriage, and I feel blessed for the 12 years that we had together as husband and wife. Our friendship was instant, but romance took a little bit longer. Mark was a lone wolf before him and I met. But everyone who surrounded us pretty much knew we'd be married one day. The foundation of our friendship was built on clay, faith, and the wild, whereas the foundation of our love was built on my dog, Millie. Pretty sure Mark loved Millie before he loved me. In our wedding book, Mark wrote, quote, Kelly told Millie to fetch a husband. And boy, did she fetch one better than I ever could have hoped for. The artwork we made together as Homespun Harros was more successful than our individual artwork, both critically and commercially. We love to come up with stories for our critters with hats. Our art is filled with playfulness, just like our marriage, and I will always cherish the image of Mark's little mountain goats climbing flowers the size of mountains. Then building our teardrop trailer showed me how well we work together as a team. People say that embarking on a project such as this tears marriages apart, but it had the opposite effect on ours. It was outside of anything we had ever done, yet we complemented each other's strengths. Mark built, I designed. As we experienced the joy of learning together and witnessing the excellence of each other's crafts. After our trailer was complete, we embarked on a 45-day adventure in British Columbia and the Olympic Peninsula, stopping even in a tiny gold mining town, much to Mark's delight. This might be the first trip ever where Mark was able to read a book without falling asleep. We followed our noses and went wherever our excitement took us. Mark learned about lake swimming on this trip. Unlike Alaska, you can swim in the lakes in British Columbia without freezing. We swam, we ate maple cookies, and fell in love with Canada and each other more every day. We moved to Bend to be close to Daniel and Laura, and our creativity shifted. Homespun Harros took a backseat, but for all the best of reasons. Mark foreshadowed our future together when he proposed, asking me to be his camping buddy for life. While our lives were incredibly filled with camping, paddleboarding, hiking, board games, and of course our dog pack, we still had time and energy to expand our creativity together. We designed intricate Halloween costumes, built a backyard pizza oven, Mark totally upped his welding skills, and we started the remodel on our home that would make it uniquely mine and Mark's. In a Valentine's Day card, Mark wrote, "Close your eyes now and you can smell the pines and the campfire. That's the sound of the creek passing nearby." Snuggling Jackson in our trailer, drinking coffee in bed, these are some of my favorite memories with my adventure buddy, Mark. Our favorite times together were when we were alone in the wild, surrounded only by nature and the animals we were lucky enough to spot. Whether it was me teaching Mark the difference between the sound of a loon versus a wolf, or Mark teaching me the difference between a trumpeter swan and the sound of a buffalo, you had to be there in a very small tent. Our lifelong curiosity and love of learning will bond Mark and I until we meet in heaven. And I can once again say, take his hand, go for a walk, and see where we end up.
My name's Ben Watkins, and I was Mark's manager at Ecolab, but if you knew Mark, you knew he was his own manager. I could go on all day about the awards that Mark won in the 6.5 years he worked for us, but like I said, it would just go on all day. I think he won Territory Manager of the Year for the Oregon District almost every year. In 2019, he won Territory Manager for the whole Pacific Northwest area, and every year that he worked here, he was up for that award. Mark was a once-in-a-lifetime talent for our company and a once-in-a-lifetime person. Mark was our team's tech support. He was our IT support. He was always there for anyone in need. That's just who Mark was. Mark didn't stop at inspiring the team in Oregon. He inspired the entire PNW area, from Fairbanks, Alaska to Southern Oregon. He was always the late-night tech support. Let me tell you a little bit about Mark. I hired Mark in February of 2016. On his third day of training, he was repairing a machine that I normally called in a professional service company to do. I sent out a text to my team, to the guys, said, we need to have this kid's metachlorine levels checked. If you don't know what metachlorine levels are, they're what gives Jedi Knights from Star Wars their power. And Mark's metachlorine levels would have rivaled Master Yoda. Mark and I instantly became friends for our love of Star Wars, Star Trek, and anything science fiction. And this is when I really found out that Mark was training me. A month or so later, I was in the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport for training, and I ran into Mark, who was also back there for training. And you know what Mark had? An R2-D2 suitcase, just like you'd see a 12-year-old with. One time he was going on and on about something, and I'm just like, okay, Sheldon, whatever. And he turned around, looked at me, and goes, Kelly calls me that sometimes. Mark was not only my best employee, he was my best friend. He was family. He took my wife to doctor's appointments when I was out of town. He helped out on my property. If you ask Mark, I'd always ask Mark, hey, can I ask a favor? And he'd go, the answer's yes. What do you need? I'm going to miss the stories of what he cooked in his pizza oven, what he did to his Forerunner, our Friday afternoon beers, and most of all, that smile, that mischievous twinkle in his eye, the hats, the ties that he loved to wear, the button-up shirts, but most of all, I'm going to miss my confidant and my best friend.
I'm James Jaggard. I'm a good friend of Daniel and Elizabeth, and got to know Mark and Kelly pretty well as well. Khalil Gibran, the Christian mystic poet, once wrote that your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. The things that I'm about to say, I know that I'm not the only one here that can say them and hold them true. Many of these things belong to all of us. Many of us here can say that Daniel and Mark gave us the independent realization that they are likely the best friends that you will ever have in your life. I am an incredibly fortunate person for many reasons. I am truly fortunate because I get to know the Harro family. I got to go on adventures with Daniel and Mark. I got to have Daniel as my best friend for 6 years and had planned a lifetime of more with our family. I've ridden bikes with Daniel many times, but I remember one particular foggy morning in the forest where Daniel and Mark allowed me into their time as brothers to ride mountain bikes from Bachelor down to town. Along the ride, the Harro boys were constantly whooping and loudly calling out to one another, just in the mist and in the clouds. And they weren't checking on each other's safety or mine. They were just simply shouting out their joy at the ride and their excitement to share it together. I was really blessed to be along for that ride on that particular morning. Over the years, I've been able to work on several projects and mechanical mysteries with both Daniel and Mark. It was always a highlight to have Mark come through the cul-de-sac and see the brothers get really into creative problem-solving mode, or pack up the dogs on a mountain bike ride together, usually jumping into Mark's amazingly restored Toyota monstrosity. Daniel was more than my best friend. Daniel and Elisif and Cinder are part of our family. Daniel loved to hear the latest antics of my 3 boys and how my poor, sweet wife tried to herd them through life. He gave us so much support and assurance that our boys would not be maniacs into adulthood, and that we could take him and Mark as prime examples of wild boys that grow up into still wild but wonderful men. Daniel, like many of the heroes present here today, has saved countless lives, helped bring a few into the world, and has met people at the worst moments of their lives, and has been there to get them through those worst times. He was also there for us, for our family's comparatively small trials and inconveniences in life, always with a tender and understanding heart, miraculously undiminished by the sheer weight of human despair that he witnessed regularly at work. It's impossible to describe Daniel's deep love for all of our neighbors, especially taking time to make sure each of our children always had an adult that cared deeply for them, would give them undivided attention, and greeted them with big, wholehearted Daniel yells. For the children of our cul-de-sac, Daniel had a nickname. Our older boys, still now only 8 and 6, they couldn't pronounce his name quite distinctly when they were very young, and so it came out as Dangle. Of course, I was quick to perpetuate this nickname, mostly on account of the high-cut running shorts that he wore as much part of his personality as his classic mustache. I don't say things like what I'm about to say lightly. I know that there are lots of cognitive traps and coping mechanisms that we all fall into when dealing with grief and loss. Though I know personally and even see in front of me now people that are of the highest quality on the whole earth, I must say that Daniel lived in such a way that he claimed his full authority to love, to instigate joy, and that Dan truly lived a life that was the most effective mirror of Christ's love that I have ever witnessed. When I imagine the fateful homecoming, the next time that we will all see Daniel, I picture him waiting excitedly to give us a surprise hug and take us on a new adventure that we have no way to fathom yet in this current state of existence. I have had 2 very different thoughts since the accident. One is that I have completely lost my best friend forever, and life will never be as good without him. And the other thought is that I have known in a deep way that he isn't truly gone at all. This is a knowledge beyond the initial shock and the inability of my mind to comprehend the loss that I know I'm not alone in feeling. This is beyond something I say to myself to believe in what I desperately hope for. This is just the simple knowledge that Dan's light does live on. The difficult thing is that it's dependent on all of us how true we can make either of those thoughts. Holding his absence in our mind, honoring the loss to our daily lives and our future plans, while also recognizing his everlasting imprint on our lives and our times to come. Dan showed us a spectacular example of how to live life. The responsibility to love each other as fiercely as Daniel did is on us now. The responsibility to ask each other about our adventures and listen as intently as he did. Finding the joy and laughter in our everyday stresses now falls upon us collectively. I challenge you all to live into your full authority to love one another joyously, to live every adventure so you can describe it as Daniel did when he returned home each time. Whenever we asked him how his ride or his ski or even his time with family was, he would unfailingly say, "It was all time."
Good morning. My name is Tim Reardon, and I had the distinct privilege of working alongside Daniel at Ben Fire and Rescue, as well as the honor of being Daniel's friend. Understandably, any attempt to capture Daniel's amazing legacy and unwavering spirit in 5 minutes or less is impossible. But here goes. Professionally, Daniel was one of the most skilled and enjoyable people I have ever had the pleasure to work with. From early in his career at Ben Fire, he quickly sought out ways to become involved in many different and important aspects of the organization, and his drive and determination was unparalleled. Over the course of Daniel's 8 years at Ben Fire, we worked alongside one another in a variety of different capacities. One area worth mention that meant a lot to Daniel was his role on the Special Operations Technical Rescue Team. Daniel was the kind of guy that enjoyed being responsible for some of the most high-risk, low-frequency call-outs. Daniel brought a certain levity and humility to the team that had such a positive effect on our monthly trainings. One of the many professional qualities that struck me about Daniel was his ability to always look for improvement in himself, in others, and the department as a whole. Years ago, Daniel and I traveled out to Colorado to participate in an advanced ice rescue class. Very much a person of action, Daniel recognized an opportunity for improvement in our current ice rescue operations and chose to find a way to implement it. He was always looking for ways to make us better. And while most would simply mention something and walk away, Daniel took the hard next steps and worked to improve operations. During that trip, I was amazed at how readily he learned the new skills and was able to incorporate them into our department-wide training. And as a result, both the community and the department are safer because of his action. Daniel's lovingly charismatic personality and dry, quirky sense of humor was a breath of fresh air in a profession that is sometimes defined by rigid borders and formalities. Daniel made us all laugh. His laugh was infectious, and he made coming to work absolutely fun. Daniel had terms which we fondly called heroisms. These were usually a single word or short phrases that he used to emphatically describe a situation, either positively or negatively. For instance, one of his most frequently used expressions for all things negative was simply grim, and was usually bemoaned by Daniel as we headed to the truck for our fifth call after midnight. Hearing Daniel's guttural utterance of grim lifted our spirits and made us all chuckle as we headed out into the wee hours of the morning. And conversely, Daniel's positive exclamation was simply all time, and it was used to emphasize things that went well, which was often with him. Daniel's enthusiasm for the job was never ending. This was most evident in his penchant for on-duty training and mastering his craft. Earlier this summer, our crew at Station 305 was tasked with helping facilitate the arrival and training on our new ladder truck. Daniel was thrilled with this assignment and took it upon himself to thoroughly learn the intricacies of the new truck, as well as all the equipment. As a result, his enthusiasm inspired us to become more proficient at our jobs, as well as a more cohesive crew. But here's the thing, I can go on and on about Daniel's phenomenal abilities in fire engineering, truck work, various technical rescue disciplines, and his ability to somehow know how to tie 1,000 different types of knots. But I think what defines Daniel's legacy is that not only is he 100% proficient in the technical, but he truly excelled in the more nuanced part of the job. And that's his ability to build and maintain relationships within the department, foster growth, and be a great mentor. Daniel was well loved within the organization. He was a natural leader and understood how to teach those new to the job. Incredibly, he was a key instructor in just about every fire academy since he was hired. Not only was he extremely patient, but offered constructive and insightful advice on just about every topic. In recent days, many have reached out and expressed how Daniel was a tremendous support to them professionally and personally. Daniel's genuine and supportive nature was evident in his actions. Always quick, with a warm embrace or a big smile, Daniel's presence was both comforting and reassuring. Put simply, we're all better because Daniel was in our lives, and Bend Fire and Rescue has clearly suffered a great loss. On a personal level, Daniel was just about one of the coolest people I've known. Daniel loved to learn new things and seek out new experiences. His adventuresome spirit shone bright, and his love for enjoying the outdoors was inspiring. He had a passion for big mountaineering objectives, climbing, backcountry and Nordic skiing, bikepacking, aviation, and international travel with his wife of nearly 16 years, Alyssa. His resume was impressive, and to say that Daniel chose to live his life to the absolute fullest potential would be an understatement. At the risk of using an old cliche, I think we can all agree that Daniel lived more in his 38 years than many can hope to live in a lifetime. Daniel and Alyssa built a wonderful life with one another, and they scheduled their time off work to maximize their time together. Daniel affectionately referred to themselves as Team Harro. Those of us that worked with Daniel knew how much he valued his time away from work, and those days were spent with Alyssa and their awesome dog, Cinder. While their adventures together have taken them far and wide, personally, it seemed I would see them most often skate skiing up Meisner or Mount Bachelor. They were permanent fixtures up there, logging an impressive amount of mileage and vert every year, all while achieving max heart rate, another one of Harro's classic expressions, indicating a significant cardiovascular effort, which, for the record, was impressive. I'd be remiss if I didn't share one last anecdote regarding Daniel's passion for skate skiing and another classic heroism. As far as I can figure, for Daniel, there were no bad days. He lived a 100% positive and optimistic life. This characteristic was deeply loved and respected by all who had the pleasure of working and playing with him, and it was infectious. During the winter months, Daniel and I would often communicate weather and snow condition reports with one another in hopes of determining when and where to ski. At the time, we were on different shifts and both enjoyed the frigid pre-dawn skis before work, so these early reports were especially nice. However, it didn't take me long to learn that his positive spirit was impenetrable. And for Daniel, even the roughest conditions still elicited a reply with, "Best day ever, and all time." For a guy that measured life in terms of stoke level, I think we can all agree that right now things are pretty low. There will be challenges ahead. In the coming days, weeks, months, and years, there will be times when his absence is felt more heavily, and it will be hard. However, as difficult as it will be these times when we must summon Daniel's unwavering spirit and think about how he chose to live his life. So when you set your alarm for that pre-dawn mission, don't hit the snooze button. Take the extra time to reach out to those who need it. Embrace life, laugh, and do what you can to make this world a better place. That's how Daniel chose to live his life. Let's honor his legacy by living his wish. Thank you.
Hi, my name's TJ Vibert. I was a good friend of Daniel's, coworker, and also fellow partner in the Husky, his beloved airplane. I was asked to read this on behalf of Jake Rule. Those of you that don't know Jake, Jake was a dear friend of Daniel's, a mentor, and also a partner in the plane. So this is basically from Jake's perspective. Arriving at the airport 10 minutes early for our regular 6 a.m. flight, I would usually find Daniel beaming in the dawn light with the flight planning complete, the aircraft ready, outside on the ramp, pre-flighted, fueled, and warmed up with the hangar already closed up tight. By this time, he would have moved on to cleaning, organizing, or performing maintenance on our delightful, though quirky red hangar, the oldest standing structure at the Bend Municipal Airport. The juxtaposition of my early morning efforts with his would leave me feeling a little bit like a slacker. Daniel, however, would immediately quell any such notion, expressing great appreciation and complete situational approval through the infectious stoke that he somehow managed to maintain. As an airman, Daniel possessed an alert mind, strong decision-making abilities, an impressive level of discipline, with all the insatiable thirst of knowledge. While he benefited from these, the most important quality for a pilot to possess is humility, which came so naturally to Daniel that it seemed to be one of his defining characteristics. As a friend, he exhibited similar qualities. He would regularly plan to meet me at home, typically arriving early, because he wanted to make an effort to better know my family, all of whom enjoyed his company immensely. My daughters will forever remember the day that Daniel brought the fire truck by the house. There he was, the hero that he is, head held high, smiling in the cab of the engine, with the lights flashing, greeting us with a couple soft toots of the horn. If you were fortunate enough to be blessed with Daniel's friendship, you knew that it was the real deal. Earning his friendship meant you would not only receive lots of love, camaraderie, good vibes, and support, but would also be elevated by the exceptional energy that he radiated. Daniel and I spoke on many matters often. He was always positive, and if we drifted away from that, he seemed acutely aware of it and would, of course, correct quickly. Occasionally, we would discuss the illness of the world. He saw some troubling things in his line of work. He treated these matters with a nicely balanced, appropriate blend of empathy and levity. As a human, I saw Daniel as a 10 out of 10. If one were to suggest otherwise, I would require some proof positive before adjusting my assessment. We all know that perfection is not a reasonable expectation for oneself, but in my eyes, he seemed committed to settling for nothing less. Daniel embodied dauntlessness. He sought to achieve greatness in all of his endeavors. The endeavors that he selected were more complex and challenging, like pioneering routes to some of the world's most difficult peaks, pushing through extremely lofty fitness goals, helping others through major life crises, and of course, being the very best possible aviator he could be. Witnessing his pursuit, he was not trying to prove anything or outdo anyone. He was simply seeking a higher level of existence. This feature of his life also brought those who touched him into a higher level of existence. By this, we should all be inspired. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank Daniel for the love and energy that you gave to this world, to all of those who surrounded you. I know that I am a better man for having had the privilege of making such unforgettable memories with you and experience your golden friendship. Godspeed, brother. I will be looking forward to our next adventure.
Well, I think we can all agree that these are grim times. And that's just one of the over 40 heroisms I can name off the top of my head. But if you know Daniel, while he loved to say that phrase to make people laugh, his life was the exact opposite of grim. There are so many things to say about my husband. This won't even scratch the surface. And though it breaks my heart to be summarizing him, I want to try because I am so, so proud of him and I loved him so much. Daniel exuded joy. He left his mark for his positivity and enthusiasm. His stoke level was rarely low, and it was nearly a given that he would call each day the best day ever and mean it wholeheartedly. In the woods mountain biking or in the snow backcountry skiing, you could hear him whoop and, "Oh yeah," the whole way down, and it was so loud. We could be out skate skiing, and it could somehow be raining sideways, and he would still declare that it was all time. As his wife, I would often ask him if it could just be okay time, but I could never talk him into believing that we weren't nailing it, and I'm so glad I couldn't. Daniel's light shone bright and unwavering, and it couldn't be diminished. People gravitated towards Daniel. They respected him. They learned from him. I think one reason among many was that he was always so present and genuine. He was kind. He made you feel that you mattered. He deeply cared for people, fostering and encouraging relationships with friends and family alike. I can't even count how many people have shared that they consider him a brother, and that's powerful. He had a deep, confident, and quiet faith in God that guided him in life. Each and every person he spent time with would come away feeling so special. This reached far and wide, including the children in his life. He loved to tell stories of all of the experiences and shenanigans he had as a boy growing up in Alaska with his twin brother, Mark. And he made sure to let people know that Mark wasn't just his brother, it was his twin brother. His childhood was no doubt one of the many things that shaped him into the man he is today, as his parents, John and Denise, and an entire village, raised and loved the Harro twins. He never lost his ability to access a childlike playfulness, and you could tell he wanted to give every kid his true self, just as he did with adults, to ensure that they know that they are loved beyond measure, that being playful and laughing is paramount, and that they matter to Uncle Dangle and so many others. Daniel was a helper and a hard worker. Really, that's all that needs to be said. He took such great joy and satisfaction with going out of his way to help others, and there wasn't much he couldn't do. If I couldn't find him, I knew he was out in the garage, working on our bikes, waxing our skis, asking nothing in return. Same went for outside our home, too. He was so generous with his time and his love. I think he's repaired nearly every single one of our neighbors' appliances and would drive all over town to do projects and acts of service for people. He got excited to help and fix and wanted the best for everyone. With that being said, he was funny. Can't begin to summarize, but just know it was all areas of his life. Somehow he could poke fun at you and still make you feel special. I think maybe that's why because he also poked fun at himself. He liked to stir the pot, but his overarching inclusivity made it all okay. Once again, sound bites and phrases were the name of the game. The phrases did indeed change eventually, but not until he had run them into the ground and then run them over about 5 million times. One example was his love of Winco, exclaiming, "Deals for days," as he named the prices off specifically of different products and produce, while I told him he sounded like Rain Man. Oh, he could be obnoxious, but his humor was authentic and infectious. Occasionally, he could coin a good nickname, one of which our mountain biking friends was blessed with, a name called Ride Hard, Take Chances. The motto he gave us was, "You can do it, I feel fine," as we attempted to contain our laughter during particular Sufferfest climbs, while he was typically in the lead, of course. Even as I've been heartbroken and shattered these past few days, I have had beautiful moments of belly laughs, remembering and sharing stories. And just remember, that hill is not going to climb itself. How to summarize his interests? Daniel was an adventurer through and through. I want people to know that he gained energy and peace from being outside, from being in the mountains, from being active, because it was truly fun, even during the "it doesn't have to be fun" times. In many ways, you could fit one single person's lifetime achievement into just a fraction of his life. He'd blow you away doing an extremely hard climbing route in the Alaska range, and then surprise you by becoming a beekeeper and being an amazing baker. His latest passion became aviation. I'm not what one could say is an early adopter, so it took me a while to come around, but his joy was undeniable. Just as many times in our relationship, he eventually won me over. I am beyond thankful that just us two also flew into the Idaho backcountry to camp, fish, and sit in hot springs back in June. It not only reiterated how safe and skilled he was, but I also fell in love with the experiences we could share together by plane. It made me so happy to see him so delighted, and those memories continue to warm my heart. Now, as his wife of almost 16 years, as of yesterday, what was Daniel to me? He is all of these things and so much more. Some people may know, and now I've been told of my nickname he bestowed on me, Honey Badger. While I won't go into details, let's just say he loved all parts of me. And I'm pretty sure he used my name like that so many times that there's many people that only know me as Badge. Our song at our wedding was "You Raise Me Up," and he continued to do just that all these years. We had only known each other for 9 months from the time of meeting to our wedding, and with that did some major growth as our 22-year-old selves matured. But we put in the work and succeeded in doing that together. Man, he helped me stand on so many mountains. When I faltered in this life, he was my rock. He made me feel so confident and secure in his unwavering love. He understood and loved me unconditionally. He never had a negative word to say about me, though as a spouse, I definitely gave him plenty of content. Our friends would call him the master enabler because he would care for me so well. We lived to go outside and experience the world together. He would say all he needed in life was to be outdoors with me by his side. We were leaving for a month in Kyrgyzstan on the 31st, going to Japan in January, and celebrating my 40th in Finland in February, just to name a few. We packed so many lifetimes into one that ended far too soon and had so many plans to continue. He was my loyal love. He was my partner. He was my adventure buddy. And we were the best team. We were Team Harro. And he also gave really good hugs. Daniel didn't wait for life to happen. He had dreams and he made them come true. And then he developed new ones and made those come true. And he took me with him side by side in this wonderful life together. One of the heroisms he would laughingly say was, "Sleep when you're dead." You could take that as macabre, but I choose to look at it as inspiration. There were no what ifs. He didn't waste 1 second of his precious life. Daniel has left an indelible mark on our lives, a lasting legacy. He will continue to motivate me, to raise me up, to raise us all up, to remember that you can have a fierce, steadfast love for those in your life, that you can gain immense joy from the beauty of the outdoors, from your friends, from your family, from serving others, that this life is better when you laugh, that nothing is out of reach of achieving with hard work and perseverance. Dream and love big, just as Daniel showed us. And you too can make the choice to make each day unconditionally, all time. Daniel was and is an absolute legend. And I am a better person for having known him, and so proud and honored to have been his wife. Thank you.
change comes on my eyes. These streets persuading me with mumbles, strange goodbyes. Through the water, through the rain, to the soul of everything. I throw my heart out on the stones, and I'm almost gone. And there's no meaning in clothes and coffee cups, cheap hotel furniture.
John's leading out up to this ice fall that we're gonna go climb. Just got the sun about 10 minutes ago. Super stoked. There's John slogging it out to the summit of Mount Wake. Knee deep to waist deep sugar. Denali shrouded in the clouds. There's Dickie, Bradley. You can actually see our camp way down there. Well, maybe not our camp, but somebody's camp. Moose's Tooth. This is kind of the ridge I'm on. Don't want to get too close to this corner of sketchiness. Some of Grosvenor and Mount Church. And I am really excited, because now I gotta go down. Good job, dude!
Yeah.
Ellen, going for it. Dude. Yeah. Damn, that looks good. Go for it, Cinder.
You want me to film you?
No, you go for it, hey.
Okay.
Down.
Lindsey Bond.
Final run. Go. Go, Cinder, go. Whoa! What was that? No big deal for the town.
Oh, I'm not gonna stop. I think we should keep going. Yeah, for sure.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence
before, but it's all good now. Like many of you, I was stunned when I first heard the news of the plane crash. There was a wild collage of emotions within me. I felt a hollow feeling in my gut and anger that the crash couldn't have been prevented. Sadness for Daniel and Mark's family and loved ones, all of you. And these emotions, they lead to questions that are tough to deal with. What is the meaning of death? What is the meaning of life? What are we here for? Why do we have to deal with this loss? Why pain, suffering? In the face of death, we're often speechless. And what can I say now? What can we say to each other that won't sound phony, trite, or even profane? In moments like this, it can feel like we don't know where to turn. And without answers, it can lead to deep anxiety and anger. And I wouldn't be here today if I didn't feel like there were answers to some of those questions. My name is Brian Ely, and I'm a chaplain at St. Charles. And it is through this role that I've been able to get to know Daniel's wife, Elizabeth. And it was in my former role as a Ben fire chaplain that I first got to know Daniel. My first encounter with Daniel is I was cooking breakfast for all the guys one Saturday morning, and Daniel ate enough for 3 people. And I thought to myself, where does it all go? Because some people it stays with, not for him. So this launched us into discussions about faith, his love and enthusiasm for adventure and the outdoors. Even yesterday, I went to Niswanger, mainly just to see Elizabeth and give support to the rest of the family. And on this table was prominently displayed the book in the Endurance, among other memorabilia. And one excerpt from that story describes an ad by Sir Ernest Shackleton. And he said, men wanted for hazardous journey to the South Pole. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success. Daniel and Mark were the kind of men who would come without hesitation to join Shackleton on one of those expeditions. Shackleton named his boat Fortitudine Invincimus, which translates through endurance we conquer. And it was the family motto for Shackleton. But it was lived by the Harro brothers, by endurance we conquer. The Harro brothers were the kind of guys that I wanted to get to know. I miss Daniel. I miss his jovial spirit, of course, the mustache. Never got to go on that fishing trip we dreamt of. And today we've heard much about the Harro brothers. They lived life to the full. They lived an abundant life. And they demonstrated that our actions matter. What's more, actions usually speak louder than words. Both Daniel and Mark were servant leaders. Whether it was Mark fixing anything that had a motor, Daniel, by the very nature of his profession as a firefighter, people are watching what we do. And you can love people and care for people and model a great life. And your actions can even nudge people and create curiosity as to what is different about you. I think they would also want you to know that there is more than just living and dying, more than just making it through the day. Both Daniel and Mark had a gentle and quiet, yet strong faith in and love for Jesus that they leaned into. Daniel and Mark had a very personal approach to passing on this good news in a very natural way. It was not about a system or a program or an agenda. They did it right where they were placed, exactly how God had wired each of them. And they reached out with God's love in organic ways to everyone they encountered. They were remarkable. It made me think of a passage at 1 Peter 3:15. Through thick and thin, keep your hearts at attention and adoration before Christ, and be ready to speak and tell anyone who asks you for the reason of the way that you are. But do this with the utmost courtesy. They lived that. They lived this well. You know, we can be comforted in the midst of our grief that their story is part of that greater story. And that story is what our hearts most need in this time, that they are in the arms of the Savior they trusted. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened with more than you can carry, and I will give you rest." Jesus went to a funeral once, and he said he had a very guttural reaction, and anger welling up from the depths of his being. And I think he's still angry, he's still outraged by it, and he's weeping with us today, not because there isn't hope, but because he sees death as an intruder. It isn't supposed to be this way. And I think that's why these moments of grief and tears and brokenheartedness are fitting responses. You don't want to know the words that I think the Harro brothers would want us to really hear. I mean, besides all the heroisms. But I think they're the words that Jesus shared to a small group of people the night before he died. And he said, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. Do not let your hearts be troubled." And it's a very comforting thought, because Jesus is going ahead to prepare a place in heaven for all of them. And it's a living space. It's not a dying space. And it's a space where the Harro brothers are experiencing the greatest adventure that they've ever experienced. And they're waiting for each of us to join. Daniel and Mark were remarkable men. They understood brotherhood like most never will. I love the lyrics of that song that we just heard titled Brotherhood. Oh, geez, I got to keep it together. I love that song. It reminds me of that familiar Psalm 23 passage. You know, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The lyrics, "Brother, I'm right here, and on those days when the sky begins to fall, you are the blood of my blood. We can get through it all." In closing, we will continue to grieve and cry together and regroup and try to think about life without the ones we love. Let us do so with hope. Let me pray. God, we don't fully understand all of this, but I'm grateful that you offer us hope. In times of sorrow, we recognize our need for you like no other. Thank you for being present. Guide and direct us and help us to grieve well. We trust that you will comfort us. Someday, we trust that all this present suffering will make sense. We believe, help us with our unbelief. Amen.
We are now transitioning into the fire service honors for firefighter engineer Daniel Harro. The ceremony you're about to witness is filled with history, tradition, and honor. You will be directed to stand and salute at certain times. All uniformed personnel shall render a proper hand salute. All others shall place their right hand over their heart as a sign of respect and honor. These traditions are long-standing in the fire service and demand your attention and reverence in memory of Daniel and his family. Thank you for your presence and your patience.
It was the bell that signaled the start of duty, and through the days and nights, each alarm was sounded by a bell. It called the firefighters to fight fires and place their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow neighbors. And when the fire was out and the alarm had been completed, it was the bell that signaled its end. We seek strong words and symbols that give us a better understanding of how we feel when we experience a loss, And we use these symbols and words to reflect that devotion our brothers and sisters had for their duties. The sounding of the bell, a special signal of 5 rings, 3 times each, represented the end of their duties and that they were returning to quarters. And now, firefighter engineer Daniel Harro has completed his tasks. His duties well done. He has given his best. For our fallen brother, his last alarm, he has gone home. Please stand for the bell ceremony. All uniformed personnel, attention. Present arms. Order, arms. At ease. You may be seated.
announcing the final tones. Final tones for engineer Daniel Harro, who was in the fire service for 15 years and selflessly gave 8 years of dedicated service to Bend Fire and Rescue. Thank you for your unwavering service to your community and fellow brothers and sisters. You will forever be missed in our day-to-day, but in our hearts you will always stay. May the sun always light your path, and may the wind always be at your back. Dispatch clear.
Please remain seated until the family and caskets are escorted out. You are released. Thank you for coming.